Hi, folks. Welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well, the weather did warm up today. It started off kind of cool, but it did not take very long for it to heat up. It's not terrible, but it is definitely warm. Today, I'm not going to talk about all the cool things going on in the news. Some of you will enjoy that. Others will miss it. I'm still going to make a video about all the current stuff, all the new tariffs that the president has issued, all the talks that's going on between the president and the prime minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, where that's going, the economy, how consumer spending is dramatically down, all that kind of stuff. You'll be able to watch that video over on Locals. If you want to go over there and watch it, for those of you that are members over there, be watching for that. If you're not, just simply click on the link below. You can go over there. That's my, I guess you could say, private membership only area. Some of the stuff that I post, you don't have to pay the membership for. You can view it free. And then other things, certain content, it is behind a paywall, yes. But it's also free speech. There's no commercials like what you see here on YouTube when you're watching, and no censorship. So anyways, if you want to go watch that kind of stuff, go ahead over there. I want to talk about something that I think is, well, it should be in our, should be thinking about this a lot more, especially with what's going on in the news in the world today. And I'm talking about all this flooding. There's more of it coming. The video I made this morning pointing out all the areas that have had extreme levels of flash flooding in the last few days. It's not over. I'm pretty sure of that. In fact, North Carolina has new warnings out. So for those of you in North Carolina and north of that area, be watching. That tropical storm or tropical depression is really dumping a lot of water on the area. And so there's already been need for evacuations in certain areas and search and rescues. So the reason why I'm this video today is to talk about search and rescue, because as preppers, as people that are going to be self-sufficient, and especially for those of you that choose to live out like this, out away from the cities and the people, the odds are you're possibly going to find yourself in a situation where you need to do some search and rescue, whether it be because of flooding, missing people, storms, all that kind of stuff. Here's the thing. If you get pretty good at search and rescue, it doesn't take much to take those skills of search and rescue and switch it over to tracking and reconnaissance for later on when you need to do that kind of stuff. It's a lot of similar skills, not identical, but it's similar. Some of the equipment transfers over. So it's a good skill to develop. If you are part of a MAG, a little tribe, some kind of prepper group, you should have your own search and rescue team. You should have your own, just an emergency team. That's how we got our emergency response team started here a couple of years ago, because it was just for our own group, and then it's grown to where now it's a countywide organization. We're a nonprofit, and we service the whole area and back up local fire departments and the sheriff's department, everything when it comes to storms and search and rescues and fires and things like that. You don't have to go to those extremes or go to that length, I guess I could say, but you should have some type of I guess you could call it a quick response team. And it isn't always just with guns, because more times than not, you're going to need other things than guns. Sometimes you need those, and you need to be ready for when you need those. But what about all the other times when you just need medical or some type of rescue, whether it's search and rescue, water rescue, all that kind of stuff? You should be planning for that. You should also get properly trained. You can watch a lot of videos. There are some online courses that you can take that are pretty good. Those kind of give you an awareness of what it is. But you're never, ever going to get the full breadth and scope and real hardcore training without just getting out there and doing it. The National Association of Search and Rescue, NASAR, I think is probably the best. That's where I get my credentials through. The Mountain Rescue Association, they have a lot of online videos that you can go through, little online courses. It's not going to make you a search and rescue expert. But it can certainly give you a little kind of, open your eyes and heads up on what to do and what it's about. But you need to get out there with your people and you need to train. This is something that we've been doing more here lately in our local area and putting a heavier focus on it. And it's interesting that it's happening right about the same time that there's all these floods and all this search and rescue stuff going on. And so I thought I would talk about that today, show you just a little bit. This is just a tiny bit of gear that the average person can have and the average person with a minimal skill level can use. I'm not bringing out a lot of the swiftwater rescue and all that kind of stuff, because that you are getting into some more serious skill levels. This is pretty basic stuff. It doesn't cost an arm and a leg, and it can kind of help you get a little ready. And if you take this with some team training and then training outside of your team with professionals, you can probably come up with a pretty decent little group. Now, before I get into this kind of stuff, I want to say that we're talking about search and rescue probably not when the SHTF really happens, when the collapse of government, and so there's, no law, no rule of law. There still is. So, your prepping plan to exist in a, world without law, that's not this, right? So having certain credentials where you have gone professional training can greatly help. A lot of times, depending on the scene, depending on who's in command of the scene, they may not want your help if you don't have certain professional levels of credentials. And so it is important to have that. Yes, you do have to play, you're playing in their sandbox, so you got to play in their rules. And it depends on jurisdictions, depends on who's in charge, where it's at. Sometimes search and rescue is headed up by the sheriff's department. Sometimes it's the local fire department. Sometimes it's the emergency management office. It just really depends on the area. It's different everywhere. And so that's why, it's good to have a good understanding of how the incident command system works. If you're planning on going out and volunteering, you need to know how it works, because every agency in the country uses the same incident command system, which is how they figure out who's in charge and how things work. You should probably have a good awareness of this stuff. And you can get those incident command classes for free. They're all online. And if you're interested in that, shoot me an email. I'll send you some links. It's really easy to do. Okay? Anyone can do it. So anyways, let's get into some things. First thing I'm going to cover is what everyone likes to talk about and everyone likes to argue about, and that's radios. Yes, you have to have comms. Again, depending on the scenario, like if you got your own little, your mag team and you're out there doing search and rescue on your own because it's maybe a neighbor or one of your own people and you're doing it on your own, and that's different. If you're part of or volunteering, like say what's going on in Texas or North Carolina or New Mexico or all the other places, you're going to be plugged into them. So they may issue a radio. You may need a radio that can be programmed to their frequencies. Maybe you just have your own inner radios. But you need to have some good comms. If you aren't a ham operator, which is what you should be, I get this, I don't want to get my ham license because in an emergency with SHTF, it doesn't matter. Well, we're not talking about SHTF. We're not talking about that. There's a fly keep getting on my camera here. So the law still applies. The people that are down there in Texas, the law still applies to them. And don't think that the FCC wouldn't come after someone that is not, licensed. They absolutely can. I'm not saying they will, but they certainly can. So you should have your license. If you don't, I guess take your chances. If you're not using the ham frequencies because you don't have a ham license, probably the only other real good option is GMRS when it comes to this. Most other radios that don't require a license, you're not going to get the distance to make a difference. GMRS is getting iffy. You can get something like a 10-watt repeater if it's set up at the right place. They're not terribly expensive. That can certainly expand your area of coverage. But have good quality radios. I know a lot of people use Baofangs. I have Baofangs, but those are backup radios for me because sometimes they work great. I've known some that last for 5-6 years. Now I know some that last 2 weeks. And I don't want that kind of inconsistency when I'm out there trying to save lives. So, I stick with Motorola's, ICOMs, Kenwoods, things like that. Yeah, they're more expensive, but you can find a Motorola that's 15, 20, 30 years old. It still works great, and it'll probably work in another 20, 30 years. You're not going to find that with Baofengs. So anyways, radios. Get you a good head covering. This is just a simple little bump cap helmet. Nothing too expensive, nothing too extreme. $50 to $100. You can get a decent one. I know that you can get some real high dollar ones. As long as it is ANSI certified, then that's fine. Now you have to be careful because there's a lot of those Temu cheap Walmart, cheap China ones that are like 10, 15, 20 bucks. $50 to $100 range should get you a decent search and rescue bump cap. Yes, you can get them in the $300 to $500 range too, but you should be able to get something like this. This has also a little light on it. I can't remember, for some reason I want to say this was a stream light, but it may not be. No, I don't think it was. I can't remember the brand, but it's a pretty good one. It's last a long time. It's got different settings. It'll also do red light, and it'll flash. This is stream light, another type of flashlight. This is commonly used in the fire service. This is a survivor light. You see a fireman with them on their uniforms. They're not extremely bright, but they last a long time. And so, and they're very durable. They're a little heavy. They're waterproof. They're impact. They can handle heat. All that's why firemen use them. But this is something good to have a good quality. Yes, I know there's a lot of decent flashlights out there for $10 to $50, but if you spend a couple $100 on something like this, a little less, a little bit more, you'll appreciate the quality. Trust me. Something that every mag group, in fact, every prepper I think should have, is a throw rope for water rescue. There's swift water rescue, which is where you've seen the guys go out in these fast boats and they're all geared up and they got their, water kits on and everything, and they're jumping in the water and they're pulling people out. That takes a lot of training and a lot of skill level. There's high water or surface water or standing water rescue. And then there's just rescue from a bank. Something like this, you don't have to have an immense amount of skills to throw this at someone that's floating in the water. These are not expensive. You can get these on Amazon for about $25, $30. I've seen some of the nicer ones for $50. I have several of these. And you should just have one. I keep one in my vehicle because you never know. And around here, in the area that I live and the type of water that we have, this would be enough for, a lot of scenarios. I'm not dealing with massive, huge rivers. And if you catch it at the right time, you can throw this to someone and pull them ashore. So it's a very cheap investment that could easily save a life. Then also just regular rope. This is just climbing rope. I keep a few spools of this or rungs of this, and then I have some other climbing gear and things like that. You don't have to have that if you don't have the ability for that kind of skill, but certainly having some good rope is a good idea. Some good quality rope that you could tie off and get someone. Maybe you're not rappelling down a cliff or pulling someone up but just having some good rope for rescue purposes. There are things that you can use it for that you don't have to have lots of training and a high skill level to do. And then the last thing I think I'm going to cover here is a pack. And I've got about 4 different types of chest rigs. This one I grabbed today because this is the one I've been using more. And the reason is because in our area, typically search and rescues or water rescues, we're not out for hours and hours or days and days. Now, if I was in a scenario like what's going on in Texas, where I was deployed for many days, I have different gear for that has more stuff or capability of holding more stuff. This is just a med kit. But it's still, it's got straps on it. I can add more stuff to it. But for most of the scenarios that we deal with around here, this works. And the med kit has also got a little pouch here. You can put a radio, or you can put that flashlight, the orange one I showed you, can go in here. Pretty much, I'm not covering everything. This is just, it's kind of like a little bit of a robust IFAC, right? I've got a couple of, now, come on here. Gonna make a fool of me and not open up. It's got caught on something. It's got a couple of tourniquets, some cats. It's got some chest seals. I've got some SAM splint here on the other end, other pouch. It's mostly just bandaging material here. Some eye wash, some crinkle gauze. Oh, I guess you guys can't see that, can you? I'm gonna hold it up. Sorry about that. Israeli bandage, various types of gauze, some tape, and then, you know, like an ace bandage, things like that. This is basically, you find someone, you know, this is to kind of stabilize the situation. I'm not giving them meds. I'm not giving them oxygen or anything like that. I mean, we have the capability, have a bigger backpack with that kind of stuff. But this is something that I would go in if we're not really expecting to see that. It's just a lost hiker, someone that's probably in pretty good health, then maybe this is what I would take. Having a variety of things for different scenarios, I think works. I understand because I'm there now and I've been this way a long time. Your budget gets in the way. You know, if you had a big budget, if you had a lot of money, you'd have multiples of all this kind of stuff, right? But as much as you can, try not to have like one size fits all gear. It's difficult. That's why I have 3 or 4 different types of chest rigs for different scenarios. One's more combat, one's a more robust search and rescue, one's a water rescue, and then this is just my simple medic kit for when I go on a simple search and rescue or maybe a wildfire call or something like that. But having kind of that variety, if you can get to that point, is a good thing. Getting out there with your little tribe and doing some search and rescue, getting out in the woods, doing some hiking, getting where you're physically capable of walking, you know, walking on the terrain and not getting yourself injured is important. All of that kind of stuff you should be doing, because this is what's happened in the last several days. Should be a major reminder for you preppers to get out there. It's not, I said this the other day, it's not just about being tactical. It's about being able to respond to the type of emergency that's thrust upon you. And it's not always combat, folks. Yes, we have to be prepared for that, but that's not always the scenario. So you need to be training and prepping for this kind of stuff too. There's a lot more stuff. There's a lot more stuff you can get. I was just trying to show some things that are pretty reasonably priced, something that the average person could figure out how to use with very little skill and very little training. And then it can go way up from there. Bottom line is you need to be getting yourselves ready, getting your houses in order, preparing yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video.